Hey there, students. Tom Richey here, and it looks like the College Board has released the DBQ for 2021, the APUSH DBQ for 2021, the paper pencil version. Now, they kind of did us dirty. They went into the post-World War II, kind of threw you out there. It was that first group that I thought surely the College Board is not going to get this group that's taking the exam first. Surely they're going to have the decency not to go that far out, but they did. So, just never be surprised with anything the College Board does. Okay. Hey there, Christy and Carlin. We got a few of you here watching live. So what we're going to do, we've got links to all of these documents. I have a link to the free response questions that have just been released by the College Board. I also have a link to the Google document that I'm using. Those of you watching on YouTube, y'all are able to get into the Google document so that y'all can see what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be working through this DBQ. Now, I have taken a cursory glance at it, but I have not actually seen it. Okay, hey there, Jacob, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, and again, this is my first time looking at this. So this is something that, is just brand new for me here. So with that, let's go ahead and, see this. Now, this is copyrighted material, even though it's publicly available on the web. I am not going to display the actual DBQ. Okay, so if you want to see the actual DBQ, make sure to follow the link that I've provided to you. Okay, so as far as that goes, the prompt is evaluate the extent to which economic growth led to changes in United States society in the period from 1914 to 1970. Okay, so what we've got here, evaluate the extent to which economic growth, okay, so led to changes in United States society. Okay, society in the period from 1940 to 1970. Okay, so in the period from 1940 to 1970. Now, first of all, this is some easy contextualization, right? So what we're going to note here is our contextualization fell right into our lap. Okay, so our contextualization here, and let me go ahead and share the screen with you now that I'm on the Google document. Remember, I've shared the link to that in the description. So contextualization, we're going to have either the, the Great Depression. Okay, so the Great Depression and or World War II, okay, or basically like the lead up. Okay, so basically the lead up to World War II. But I think the Great Depression, that's going to be our best contextualization. When you think about this, you always want to think about, okay, why 1940, why 1970? Okay, so as far as that goes, 1940 is very easy, thinking in terms of this is when the United States is starting to get out of the Great Depression because of World War II. Remember, it says in the course and exam description, it's like, New Deal programs FDR tried, but before World War II, there really wasn't a lot of progress in economic recovery. So we're going to start with the economic recovery, and it's going to begin before the economic malaise of the 1970s. Okay, so we're going to be looking at a period of economic growth. Now, I've got 2:52 right now. We've got an hour to go through this. So the first document, okay, so Franklin D. Roosevelt's statement on signing the GI Bill of Rights, okay, the GI Bill. Now, what we're going to be doing here, we've got to think about our argument, the way that we're going to set this up. Okay, the way that we're going to set up our argument is that it's going to be on the, let's see, so we've got to think in terms of setting this up in terms of to a great extent, okay, to a great extent, and to a lesser extent, possibly, okay? But then we've got to think about, like, what are some ways in which we see the impact, okay? The other thing is, if y'all are over here in the Google document with me, I'm also looking at the impact, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look here. All right, so we're looking at the overall impact. So what are the ways I would say here, what are going to be the top three? So what I'm going to say, yes, Michael, this is one of the DBQs here, okay? So as far as that goes, let's go ahead and see what we're going to set up here is impact 1, impact 2, and impact 3. Okay, this is how I think I'm going to set this up. Okay, so you want to think about before you really get into this, how is it that you are going to, exactly how are you going to set this up here? Okay, so so with that, how is this going to be set up? All right. All right. So with that, going into this screen sharing here, we are going to impact 1, impact 2, impact 3. All right. And so going into that, what are our 3 impacts and what is going to be the degree? Okay. So I'm going to be thinking about that. So impact 1 and what is going to be the degree of impact. Okay. Impact 2, what is going to be the degree of impact, okay, and impact 3, what is going to be, okay, so the degree of impact, okay. So as far as that goes, let's see, that we're going to look at all of these. Okay, we're going to look at all of these. And then, so let me go ahead and stop sharing again. I'm not going to put the College Board copyrighted materials on the screen here. And so with this, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's statement on signing the GI Bill of Rights, 1944. So what I'm going to do here is when we think about document 1, GI Bill of Rights, and so what this is going to do is this is going to is going to set this up to veterans to purchase homes. Okay, so basically what we're going to see here, loans to purchase homes. So what we're going to say is document 1. Okay, so let me go ahead and get this, get this going again. Document 1, we're going to see here that this is FDR. Okay, so FDR signs the GI Bill. Okay, which is designed in order. Okay, let me just make this a little bigger for y'all. Okay, so the GI Bill, which is designed to provide World War II veterans, okay, with with assistance attending college and and buying homes. Okay, so that's the purpose of the GI Bill. Now, I knew, this, we should know about this already, but the argument supported here, this is where we have to kind of put this into a broader context. So I'm going to think the expansion of the welfare state. Okay, I'm going to think in terms of that is one thing that we're going to see here. And this is also going to tie in as we go into the 1960s with Lyndon B. Johnson. What I'm going to think about is what is this economic prosperity doing? Expansion of the welfare state. So I'm going to note that, and then we'll note here possibly go into New Deal programs, okay, New Deal programs, such as Social Security and stuff like that, so we could see this is a continuation of New Deal programs, such as Social Security and stuff and that sort of thing. Okay, so a continuation of New Deal programs such as Social Security. And so going from there, that would be, of course, historical context. Okay, that would be historical context for this document. Now, note, we're not going to mention the New Deal program. Maybe with that, we'll go ahead and note the Great Depression, but maybe not double dip into the New Deal. So going from there, we're going to think about document 2. Now, document 2, and we'll go ahead and take that off there. Remember that I've got this file linked in the description. Y'all all have access to this document. I'm just not going to put the materials up here. Property deed to the McIntosh family for a home in Seattle, 1947. This deed made subject to following restrictions, conditions, limitations, yada, yada, yada. No part of said property be occupied by any. That is all right. So we see here that it says basically this is a whites only deed. Okay. So as far as that prevent the, so let's see. Okay, now this is 1947, so we're going to have to heavily contextualize this, okay? Because 1947, we see here that there's going to be like basically a whites only deed, okay? So basically what we're going to see here is for document 2, this is a whites only property deed, okay? So, so a whites only property deed, from Seattle, Washington in Seattle, Washington, 1947. Okay, and so what we're going to note here is that this is going to have to be heavily contextualized. Okay, that we're going to note that this is going to be something that the argument supported here, I think, is going to be that we see that there is a campaign for greater racial equality, okay? And we'll note here as we go into this, we're going to say that, I would mention that perhaps the Double V campaign, okay? So the Double V campaign in World War II, hoping to end discrimination. Those would be some things that would be some historical, some historical context. When we think about the World War II Double V campaign, we can also note here that, Truman, integrates the military in 1948. Okay, so integrates the military in 1948. This was the first, so basically the first nail in the coffin of segregation. Okay, so now here's another thing, that maybe you would go into like, Jim Crow and white supremacy and that sort of thing. So those are some things that I think this document 2 is going to be tricky for people who are not ready to heavily contextualize it. Okay, I think that that is something that is important, is to have some heavy contextualization. And so with that, Ruckett, I'm glad I could help you. Well, the thing is, Zan, remember that I teach that I do this for a living. Okay, this is what I do for a living. So don't feel like, okay, I feel bad about my DBQ or something like that, because certainly that is not my intention in doing this. Okay, Leo, glad to see you subscribe to the channel, even though you're not preparing for exams. Okay, so 1949. This is how I keep house. Bringing a new baby into a tiny city apartment, okay, brought her nothing else. Could the importance of good housekeeping equipment. When she and her husband, they discovered, okay, began planning for it months in advance. One of Helen's greatest joy. Okay, so we see here that besides house cleaning economy, she saves time for the weekend, carefully planning her Saturday baking. Okay, so what we're going to note here, this could be something about like the cult of domesticity, because this is a time that, basically with the growing prosperity, it's going to be a time where a man can support a family on one income. So we would note here that I don't, gad about, there's always something to have people over on Saturday night, usually. Okay, so we're seeing here new technologies. Okay, so document 3, what we're going to see here is a family is enjoying new technologies. Okay, and I think I saw something, let's see, so a television party. Okay, so we're seeing that. Okay, so we're going to see, this is something that a family, so a family, a family shares, shares their story about preparing for a child, getting new appliances, such as a washing machine and a television. Okay, so what we're seeing there, getting new appliances and having, people over at their suburban home. And I could see a couple arguments being supported here. This could be something about new technologies. Okay, so new technologies, consumerism, and also the cult of domesticity. Okay, so we could see something about that. Now, also, I'm going to add some of this stuff is like outside evidence that I think of. I really need to add like something like this, that this could be like outside evidence that we're thinking about as well when you see me do it. So especially those of you taking the digital exam, that you're going to be taking the digital exam, you want to have a sheet that you've got something like this where you're writing some things about the document, making a record. There is an annotation tool. But when we're talking about an annotation tool, these are things that when we're thinking about these annotation tools, this is something, it's not that good. Okay, so it's not that good. So the annotation tool is not that good. And so with this, let's see. Going into this, so I would say here the new technologies, of course, we've seen the television, but we're starting to see things like, two automobiles and stuff like that, so then we could also note with the cult of domesticity, I'm going to note the feminine mystique. Okay, mystique. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the, about 1963. Okay, the feminine mystique was published in 1963, which is kind of an attack on the whole cult of domesticity. Now, that is some possible outside evidence. Okay, so that's something we want to think about there. The feminine mystique could be some possible outside evidence. And so going from there, now we're seeing a lot of stuff here that is setting up. You can really go into like civil rights, women's rights, and that sort of thing. So an automobile advertisement. Now here, this is where I go into the buddy system. Okay, and we're talking about the buddy system. How can we find multiple documents that I can use to make an argument together? So what we're seeing here is that, we see here increased consumerism, and we see here there's a car for your future. So this is where we're seeing two car families. Okay, so that's something that is becoming, so document 4, is an advertisement specifically. Okay, so what we're thinking about with document 4 is this is an advertisement specifically for having, so this is specifically aimed at two car. So basically an advertisement that is, aimed at making, getting families to purchase a second car. Now, remember, this is where we could compare the 1920s and the 1950s, because the 1920s, now this would be consumerism, okay, consumerism and technology. So we would note here that a second car, we could note, compare to 1920s, where that was where you're getting your first automobile. That would be historical context. Also, the purpose. Okay, this is easy here. Okay, so to get families to buy a second car. Okay, so this is the purpose. Okay, and this is wide open. Remember, purpose is always going to be your best fallback. Okay, so getting families to buy a second car. That is something that is the aim of this advertisement. So we see that document 3 and document 4, I'm going to note here, I'm going to say that we're going to pair this, okay, so group with document 3, okay? So I'm going to group document 4 and document 3 together. They are buddies, okay? So, and I can even put something like here, group with, buddy, so basically, document 3. Okay, that's a buddy. So this is what I call the buddy system, like getting two of these documents together that I can use to tell the same story. I'm going to put them together. We've got a buddy. Okay, so now let's go on to document 5. Okay, so going on to document 5, and so let's see what we've got there with document 5. So there, William H. White Jr., The Organization Man, 1956. This book is about the organization men. Organization men are not the workers, nor are they the white-collar people. these are people only, these people only work for the organization. The ones I'm talking about belong to it as well. They are the ones of our middle class who have left home spiritually as well as physically to take vows of organization life, and they who are the mind and soul of our great self-perpetuating institutions. They are all, as they so often put it, in the same boat. Listen to them talk to each other. Okay, listen and talk to each other over the front lawns. Okay, so listen and talk to each other over the front lawns of their suburbia, and you cannot help but be struck by how well they grasp the common denominators that bind them. They walk, so they arrive about it. To be sure, they talk of the treadmill, rat race, inability to control one's direction, but they have no great sense of plight between themselves and the organization. They believe they see an ultimate harmony. Okay, so what we can talk about here, I think this would kind of contextualize. I'm thinking that I would tell the same story with documents 3, 4, and 5. That when we're thinking about that, these are people who have like steady jobs. Okay, so when we're thinking about this, when it says here that they are, they talk. Okay, so they talk about this in their front lawns. Okay, so we can see here now. That's another thing to note is the growth of suburbia. So we can get into that as well. So documents 3, 4, and 5 are all kind of getting into this like middle class expansion suburbia life. So basically, people, so this is something where people belong to an organization. Okay, so workers, so basically white collar workers. Okay, workers increasingly find themselves. Now, this is the most bizarre one I've seen. Okay, I would think if I always try to use all 7, but if I were going to go with the 4 document format, I would not use this one. Okay, this would be on my strike list. Okay, that strike. If you are only using 4 docs. Okay, so basically, if you're only thinking about using 4 documents, I would strike it. Now, if you're using all 7, because this one's really, but white collar workers increasingly find themselves, so at working for an organization. Okay, and what we would note here is that this is like steady jobs. Basically steady, corporate career. Corporate ladder. Okay, corporate ladder kind of jobs. Okay, so with this, there is a reference to people talking on the front lawns in suburbia. Okay, so what we could get into here, this is getting into middle class lifestyles. Okay, middle class suburban lifestyles. Okay, this could be grouped. Okay, so could be grouped with docs 3 and 4. Okay, and so with that, I'm going to note, and we could get into this whole, the thing is that we'll note here that this document is 1956. So we can get into this so-called, like when we think about, we think about the growth of suburbia after Brown v. Board. Okay, so that's something to note there. Now we could also use this to tell a story with document 1. Okay, so if we wanted to, so could be paired with, or document 2. Okay, so document 2 for a white flight group. Okay, so we could think about a white flight grouping or something like that when we're thinking about this. So with this, when we're thinking about it, we could go into Brown v. Board. Okay, so Board as context. Okay, so historical context for white flight. And so if we wanted to do something, the growth of suburbia, I would put this with document 2, which was that property deed with the whites only clause. Okay. And so then we see the interstate highway system. Okay. Now, what we could note here is there is, we could even have a, something with the automobile. Like when we're thinking about this is the original like interstate highway system. So we're going to see where that's getting into. Oh, so I guess there were actually some original like 2-lane interstate highways, but that's very interesting. But basically these 4 lanes or more. Okay, so this is something that the interstate highway system, you're definitely seeing that this is connecting the country. Okay, so when we look at document 6, we're thinking in terms of the interstate highway system is connecting the country with a network of freeways. Okay, and so as far as this goes, glad to help, Mr. Good. And so going from here, we're going to see where document 6. So looking into that. We've got here a, summary, a map of the interstate highway system. Okay, so which shows a network of freeways that tend to have 4 or more lanes. Okay, so 4 more lanes. Now, one thing we would note is we've already seen, if we think about, greater use of the automobile. Okay, so when we think about this, that this is something when we're thinking about a purpose. Okay, so the purpose, the purpose was to basically and actually the interstate highway system, in order to justify the federal funds, that it was to promote the common defense, so basically make it easier for the military to move around during the Cold War, okay, in case that was needed, and to facilitate travel through the United States. Okay, so as far as that, basically, you're seeing where you could connect this. So greater use of the automobile, that is, this is one of those things. Okay, document 4. Okay, so this could be something that you pair with document 4. Okay, oops, document 4, possibly. Okay, so when you're thinking about these possible groupings, that's what we're looking at from there. And then document 7. Okay, when we're looking at document 7, A.Q. Mowbray, journalist, The Road to Ruin, 1969. An engineer. Oh, whoops. Okay, this is copyrighted material, so I'm trying not to display it prominently. Again, it is something that is available online, but I'm just not going to. I'm trying not to display it other than once in a while by accident. So remember that there is a link that I've shared with y'all in the video description if you're on YouTube, or in the crowdcast. Okay, so A.Q. Mowbray, an engineering firm, laid out a freeway system for the city of Nashville, Interstate Route 40. Instead, coming straight into the city, it would swing north in a wide loop through. Oh, okay. So this is not okay. Oh, okay. So with this, he is okay. So this is wiping out Black communities and Black-owned businesses. Okay, and so what we're seeing here is that. Let's see, by the creation of land of 50 dead-end streets along the course of the expressway. So this is something very interesting, that this is going through, like basically the, so this is going to wipe out some of the Black neighborhoods here. So this is something that, is interesting here in terms of, now I'm wondering if we could tie this into, this one's very what were y'all thinking, those of you that took this on Friday? This is a this is something that's kind of this is a tough one. I don't know where exactly to put that in. Now, one thing that we could do here, okay, I think that maybe putting this with document 2, okay, so pair with document 2 in order to show, insignificant change, okay, insignificant change, because document 2 was the one where you had the whites only property deed, okay? So that's something that I think that when we're looking at that, I would say here pair with document 2 in order to show insignificant change, that it did not lead to change in race relations, okay? And that might be what we've got there is a counter argument, okay? We've got a counter argument there if we're arguing for change in some ways, and we can say maybe not. But this is like the other thing here is that we're going to see, we could mention the 1968 Fair Housing Act, okay, which basically prohibited discrimination in terms of housing. But what we're going to do here also is we're going to note that this shows that you've still got segregated neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So basically the continuance of segregated neighborhoods. Okay. So with that, this is something that is, if we're going to go over a brief summary, Interstate 40 was slated to go through Black neighborhoods and basically destroy destroy several Black-owned businesses. Okay, so that's one thing. If we think about document 2, now what we're thinking about with document 2, okay, so document 2, this would be something about, this is kind of showing how race relations were. So there's a certain amount of continuity and change over time. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say an impact here is on basically race relations. Okay, so race relations, we're going to say document 2, whites only deed. Then we're going to say here, we'll do as outside evidence, Brown v. Board. Okay, Brown v. Board, and then document 7, I-40. Okay, so I-40, basically I-40 in Nashville. Okay, so, and I'm going to note here the degree is like basically to a lesser extent. Okay, now one thing I could also note though is that this is going to be something I could get into, Brown v. Board, but I can also get into possible outside evidence, Lyndon Johnson's, okay, so basically the Great Society, okay, so society or the Fair Housing Act, so something like that. This could be something that we're seeing here. So that's something that I think I would note, maybe race relations, are impacted to a lesser extent. Now, one thing we would note here that we see that new technologies, okay, so new technologies, okay, and this would be a great change here. So this would be significant. Okay, so I would say that new technologies, I'm going to rate this as something that is a significant change. Then we would say race relations, according to what we've got here, to a lesser extent. Okay, so new technologies, what we were noting there is that, with the new technologies, we've got, let's see, 3. Okay, so document 3, document 4, and then document, let's see, 5, and then I think 6 as well. Okay, so basically, new technologies and an increase. Okay, so, and an increase in middle class standard of living. Okay, and I would say that's significant. And this is basically, like I said here, we've got 3, 4, 5. I'm going to throw 3, 4, 5, and 6 in. I usually would not make a 4-document group, but I'm going to say here that I'm going to say documents 3, 4, 5, and 6, because all of these are really about like how they're impacting middle class life. Okay, so this is, you know, washing machine, you know, so basically washing machine and television. Okay, so washing machine and television. And then document 4, that is, I believe that was the advertisement for the second car. Okay, so, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to note here, yes, so this is the second car ad. Then there is the organization man. Okay, so we see here that the so-called organization man. You know, we're thinking about that. And then document 6, interstate highway system. Okay, so highway system. And I think that I like this organization man. This is going to go into, you know, and actually, you know what? I'm going to note here that I'm going to get this, I'm going to put this there, and then I'm going to put the GI Bill. Okay, so this is what, yeah, because I normally don't like 4-document groups. So what I'm going to do here is document, you know, document, let's see, what was that? 3, 4, document 5, and then document 1, okay, the GI Bill. And instead of going for the welfare state, what I'm going to note here is increased access to education. Okay, and so what we'll note here is access to education, and white collar employment. Okay, so we're going to note here that that would be another significant change. Okay, so with that, we see here where we've got significant, and a lesser extent. Okay, so this is going to be set up as a CCOT. Okay, so we're going to be setting this up as a continuity and change over time, that, and then to a, you know, to a lesser extent here. So if I'm going for a complex understanding thesis, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, okay, so the basically, and look at my prompt again before I get into this. So evaluate the extent to which economic growth led to changes in United States society. Now note here, society, okay, that's important there, from 1940 to 1970. Okay, so what I'm going to note here is that, you know, what, you know, so I'm going to note here that greater prosperity, remember economic, okay, so economic growth, okay, so economic growth, you know, following, you know, during and after World War II led to very significant changes, okay, changes in, you know, in American society, especially, you know, in terms of, you know, new technologies. Okay, so basically, in terms of the, you know, new technologies, let's see, access to education and white collar employment, you know, for, you know, so along with new technologies that increased the middle class standard of living. Okay, and so what we're going to note there is that these are significant changes. You know, however, you know, race relations, you know, so you know, you know, so basically social, you know, social relations between races remain strained throughout the period. Okay, so as far as that goes, you know, we can note here that's another thing, so that, you know, Truman, you know, so basically Truman integrates military. Okay, so as far as that goes, social relations remain strained throughout the period, you know, due to continued, you know, continued, yeah, I would note here, so the period in spite, okay, so in spite of efforts by the government to promote greater racial equality. Okay, so that is what I'm looking at here, and I've got 3 paragraphs, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do my contextualization last. Now note here, I spent a lot of time setting this up, but because I've spent so much time on the setup, this thing is practically going to write itself. Okay, so that's what we're looking at, here. And so with this, so with this, I'm going to note here that I've noted first access to education. Okay, so greater, so basically what we're going to note here, and this was my thesis statement. All right, so greater access to education, so basically, because of economic growth, okay, there was greater access to education. Okay, so there was greater access to education, and white collar employment, especially for war veterans. Okay, so veterans. So that's something here. And note here, remember, as I said, the GI Bill, we can think of historical context, so historical context, New Deal programs, right? So we'll note here in 1944, okay, 1944, FDR signed the Montgomery, you don't have to know that. So signed the GI Bill, which provided, assistance to World War II veterans, who wanted to buy a home or receive an education. Okay, and we're going to say here document 1. So with this, provide assistance to World War II veterans who wanted to buy a home or to receive an education. So that's what we're going to see there in document 1. And so going from there, we'll say here that, this was similar to other programs passed during the New Deal, okay, such as Social Security for older Americans, okay? Okay. However, it is difficult, to imagine that without the economic prosperity that came after World War II, that FDR would have been able to pass legislation giving something like college assistance when people didn't have, so basically when ordinary Americans didn't have anything to eat. Okay, so what I've done here so far is I've got an argumentative topic sentence. Okay, so this is what I've got here is we've got an argumentative topic sentence. All right, and then I have here after the argumentative topic sentence, then I've got my document that I've referred to. Then I've got my analysis. Okay, so this is some analysis of the document focusing on historical context. Okay, so the focus here is on historical context. And so with that, and then here, of course, we've got our thesis statement. Okay, so this is something, we've got our thesis statement here. So we're going to go ahead and note that we've got our thesis already. So we've used one document and we've analyzed that document. Okay, and then we're going to see here the organization man. Okay, so, armed with college degrees. Okay, so these, these World War II, these war veterans went on to become organization men. Okay, so basically to become organization men that worked a career, okay, in a stable corporate job and bought houses in the suburbs, okay? Bought houses in the suburbs, which I can see, you know, my grandfather was a war vet. One of them, both of them were World War II veterans. You know, one of them became an attorney and the other one became an assistant superintendent of schools. And basically, you know, the one that became an assistant superintendent of schools, I think this describes him perfectly. It's like he went to college with the GI Bill, and you know, which I find, like, you know, wonderful stories about you know, people who are like the first in their family to graduate college. And I always feel a little bit self-conscious because all four of my grandparents graduated from college. But as far as that goes, my grandfather's, that was largely because of the GI Bill. And so this is something, now this one, I'm not going to try to give this document a whole lot of, you know, just a whole lot of analysis. I'm just putting this there for, you know, something that spices this up a little bit. Okay, so that's basically what I've got here. Is I've got my, you know, my topic sentence. I've got an argumentative topic sentence. Then I've referenced two documents, and both of those documents are going to be, you know, one of the documents was analyzed. So far, two documents support an argument. One of them has been analyzed. So now I go back here to my T-chart, and I've got new technologies and an increase in the middle class standard of living. Okay, so we'll say here economic growth. Okay, so economic growth also resulted in the popularity of new technologies. Okay, so which were affordable, and, you know, affordable for the middle class. Okay, and increased the middle class standard of living. Okay, so we're going to note that. Now, again, that is my topic sentence, that everything in this paragraph is going to serve this topic sentence. And notice I've still got like 20 minutes left. Okay, I spent some time, I invested in the setup, and now this thing is ready to write itself. And if I'm taking a digital exam, I can do something like that, you know. Now, I would probably write this down if I were taking the digital exam, but I'm just going to have this here where I can look at it. Okay, so the way that I'm going to be looking at this is, you know, that they've got a washing machine and a television. Okay, and then I'll go back and look at the actual document real quick again. So okay, so McCall's magazine. Okay, so McCall's magazine, you know, showed a family. Okay, so basically now, in this DBQ, I'm not necessarily going into the women's movement, but remember that that was a potential opening that you had here, okay, was to go into the women's movement. All right, so that's something to note there. So economic growth, okay, popularization of new technologies, okay, so McCall's magazine, okay, so McCall's magazine. You know, and you could also go into how these magazines were popularized. You know, McCall's magazine mentions a couple, you know, who, you know, are enjoying the prosperity. Okay, so prosperity of the, you know, of the post-war period. Okay, the post-war period, you know, by purchasing a washing machine and a television. Okay, so television. So we're going to note that is document 3, and, you know, so from there we might think about that this is, you know, this is something here. I can offer some historical context. Okay, so I'm going to offer some historical context there, and I'm going to note that, you know, because, okay, so because the economy, you know, was growing, you know, so middle class men with college educations, okay, could easily support a family, okay, which gave rise to the cult of domesticity. Okay, so the cult of domesticity, you know, with women, you know, with middle class women tending to stay home and keep house, even if they had college degrees. Okay, you know, so we're going to note that, and we could even put in something like this, you know, which Betty Friedan, you know, would you know, mournfully recount in the feminine the feminine mystique, okay, in the 1960s. Okay, so I could say something like that. So with this, we're using the document. Okay, so we've got another document that we're using here, and we're going to bring that in. Okay, so we've got, we've got this document that's being used, and then we are giving this some additional context as well. Okay, so we're giving this some additional historical context for that document. I know some of y'all like that shade of purple. And so with that, then we're going to see here that an advertisement, okay, so, a magazine advertisement, a magazine advertisement, for a convertible, okay, so urged families to buy a second car, okay, so to buy a second car, which further indicates the level of prosperity and technological development in the 1950s. Okay, so we're going to note here that is document 4. Okay, and we'll note this, that this could be compared with the 1920s, when middle-class families tended to buy their first automobile. Okay, so automobile, so the two-car standard, okay, so standard for the middle class shows, the effects of economic growth. Okay, so we're noting there that I'm going to say, now we've used document 4, all right, and so we see here that document 4, and let's see, so then we have gotten, here that we are elaborating on this and comparing this to the 1920s, giving some historical context there. Remember, there are often going to be comparisons between the 1920s and the 1950s. And then finally, document 6, okay, so, these two-car families, so these new two-car families, enjoyed taking road trips, okay, road trips along the new freeways built by the federal government. Okay, so by the federal government, new freeways built by the federal government as the interstate highway system. Okay, or actually, was that what? Yeah, the interstate highway system. Yeah, so we've got that. So a map indicates that most of the, nearly all, okay, so I'm making a specific reference, nearly all of these interstate highways, okay, so let's see, had 4 or more lanes, okay, to accommodate, a lot of interstate traffic. Okay, and so we'll note here that that was document 6. Now, if we really wanted to go on overkill here, we could talk about how that, because remember, you can do contextualization at the beginning of your essay, or you can contextualize things throughout your essay and probably earn the point. Oops. All right. So got a little bit too trigger happy with the purple there. That is a document reference. Okay. So with that, if I wanted to, I could go into the Cold War, right? So that's something, but that doesn't necessarily expand my argument here. And so, we want to make sure that we're getting this done in time. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and write our last paragraph on race relations. Okay, so we're going to note here that, and then this is where I'm going to say, so we're going to paste that, and then let's go ahead and although, so this is our although. This is where we're going to go for like complex understanding. Although economic growth, made a, major impact in middle class life. Okay, so middle class life, suburban life, it did not do much to improve race relations between 1940 and 1970, in society. Okay, in society. Or basically, so yeah, so I'm going to note here, race relations, I would say here to improve social relations. Okay, so relations between, between races between 1914 and 1970. And I'll note here, in spite of efforts by the government to promote greater racial equality. Okay, so that's going to be something here. So we see here that, in 1947, a deed, so a deed of sale for a house. Okay, so a deed of sale for a house, specified that only whites could live in the house unless they, with an exception for domestic servants of other races. Okay, so that's document 2. And so we'll note here that this is something here that we're going to say, I would just, since we've already got we've got 1, 2, 3, we've already got 3, POVs here, etc. Now I might go into a little bit here, just getting into this here, but I'm going to go ahead and go through here that we're going to go straight to document 7. Okay, so we're going to see here over 2 decades later. Okay, so so 2 decades later, a reporter, okay, so a reporter, noted that, the Interstate 40, okay, so remember, we make specific references that Interstate 40, as it was planned to go through, and was that Nashville, I believe. Let me just make sure of that. Okay, so yeah, that was Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, so as we're going through that, we're seeing here Nashville, Tennessee. So as it was planned to go through Nashville, okay, so Tennessee was planned, to go through, black neighborhoods and destroy several black-owned businesses. Okay, so we're going to know this, that's going to be, of course, document 7. Okay, so this is something that, this is, again, I've got an argumentative topic sentence there. All right, so I've got an argumentative topic sentence. Then we've got, we've got here our thing here for a document. Then we've got another document, and then I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to make some notes. Okay, this is, now I don't like putting outside evidence in the middle of documentary evidence because I believe it makes it messy for the person reading it. So I'm going to note here, this is not to say that there had been no progress at all. Now, this is where I can freehand a little bit. I've got all of my documents. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've used all the documents. So let me freehand a little bit and get some complexity in here. So this is not to say that there had been no progress. Okay, so, in racial equality at all. Okay, so at all, as a result of the Double V campaign, okay, so Double V campaign, by Black Americans to promote, to support the war, and also, promote, promote equal rights during World War II. President Truman integrated the military in 1948. Okay, in 1954, the Supreme Court, ordered the integration of public schools in Brown v. board. Okay, so with that, ordered the integration of public schools in Brown v. Board. However, these Brown v. Brown tended to encourage middle class whites to simply move out of town out of the cities and into the suburbs. Okay, so with that, we would say that, so which limited the impact of the Brown decision, as far as changing society. Okay, so we're going to note that this is some stuff. This is, of course, I'm bringing in again here some pretty clear, like, outside. Okay, this is where I'm getting into my outside evidence. Okay, so we're going to note that this is stuff that is socially distanced from the documents. That's where I'm bringing in my outside evidence. So now I'm going to restate my thesis. I've still got some time. I'm going to restate my thesis. So I'm going to say, and I'm not going to look back at my original thesis. Okay, so although, so we'll say here, although economic growth, economic growth between 1940 and 1970, resulted in, significant changes in middle class lifestyles, okay, in terms of access to education, white collar employment, and a high standard of living with access to the latest technologies. It was very limited in its impact on, on race, so basically on, social relations between Americans of different races. Okay, and with that, I am restating my thesis. All right, so I'm restating my thesis, and then I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to do contextualization. Okay, so in 1929, okay, so we're going to note here, in 1929, the stock market crashed and sent the United States into the Great Depression. Okay, so although FDR promised assistance with his, promised a way out with the New Deal, his New Deal programs did not provide an immediate path to prosperity. Okay, so it was only after World War II began, this is straight out of the course and exam description, that the United States began its exit from economic ruin. Okay, and so we're going to note there that this is something that we're going to see. Okay, so in 1929, stock market crashed and all of that. Notice we made a reference to New Deal programs later. So FDR promised a way out. So we've got three content-rich sentences. First, stock market crash. Second, FDR's New Deal, but the New Deal did not provide an immediate path to prosperity. It was only after, World War II began that the United States began its exit from economic ruin. During this time, okay, so this time, programs created by the New Deal, okay, so deal ushered in a, a period of economic growth combined with stability. Okay, so this economic growth, okay, so changed, so we're going to note here that this is my contextualization. So with that, I have written a 7-point DBQ in less than an hour from opening it. Okay, so this is something. Now, there are also ways to get like a 4 or 5 point DBQ that is much simpler than what you've seen here. Okay, so this is something that, you know, you'll want to keep in mind there. That this is, you know, we'll go ahead and put our contextualization here. Okay, so with that contextualization, thesis statement, you know, then we've got every document being used somewhere. We've got 1, 2, we've got, you know, 3 deliberate, you know, POV, you know, historical context, purpose, audience, all of that. And then we've got, you know, this outside evidence, and then we restate our thesis. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, end this broadcast. Hopefully this is something that y'all found. Yeah, at some point I will, Morge, I will also do the SAQs. So the DBQ and the synthesis essays are not the same thing, Adnan, but you can look on my channel. I did something, if you'll just search on YouTube, APUSH DBQ versus AP Lang synthesis essay, you'll see where I'm talking with Tim from the Garden of English, okay? Why did I highlight the text? I'm showing you the different things I'm doing this. Julian, glad to help. So ladies and gentlemen, best of luck. You know, this is one of those things that, you know, what you've got here. Oh, and Beth, all right. So thank you so much. Great to see Beth here. And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank y'all for your support. And notice, you know, this was about an hour and 6 minutes, first part of which I was introducing it. So there you go. And best of luck to y'all who are taking your exams on May 19th. Always a pleasure.